So today, guys, we're talking about assignment. No, we don't say guys. It's not allowed on this channel.
What's up, you guys?
Hey guys, Andre here.
What's going on, guys?
Oh my goodness, guys.
So today we're talking about assignment. In general, the vibe around assignment is that it's terrifying and that you need to avoid it at all costs, but really it's not, once you understand it, it's not all that scary. It's something to be aware of, but nothing to panic about. And the way assignment affects you and your profit and loss depends on what option strategy you're trading. So today we're going over three, the most popular three in my opinion, where assignment can occur. And that's with selling naked calls and puts, and then we're doing debit spreads and credit spreads as well. And it won't exactly be in that order. But if you want to jump to the strategy that most interests you and how assignment affects that strategy, you can find timestamps in the description below to just jump straight there. Also, I'm wearing this shirt because I'm in direct denial that it is 36 degrees outside and I'm trying not to lose my sanity. All right, you guys ready? Let's do it. Okay, so to fully understand assignment and really get how it affects different option strategies, we first have to take a look at assignment from a broader perspective and just give a general definition to it. So here we're looking at a call and a put, and these contracts are between a buyer and a seller. And the unique thing about these sellers in this case is that they did not sell to close. Most of the time when you buy a contract and then you sell it, you're just trying to close your position, you're selling to close. Once you do so, you are no longer part of the trade. There's no obligations, there's no money moving around, you're just done. And it's as if it never happened besides your profit and loss from that trade. In these cases, the sellers here did not already own the contract, so they sold to open this call and this put. That means that they did not own it, they created it and then sold it to somebody. So throughout the duration of the life of these contracts, the buyer and seller are having exact opposite experiences. As the buyer is making money, the seller is losing money, and vice versa. That money has to come from somewhere when someone's making it, and it comes from your counterparty. So these sellers are unique in that way where they are creating the contract and then selling. They are selling to open these contracts. So let's go back to the basics. What do these contracts mean? This call option gives the buyer the right but not the obligation to buy 100 shares at the strike price. This is the foundation of what drives call options value and why people buy and sell them. But as I said, it's a right, not an obligation. They can, but they don't have to exercise this call option. But in this example, let's say that they do. Let's say that this call option is in the money and they decide to exercise it. Well, that means that they buy 100 shares at the strike price. Let me just write this buyer exercises it. Well, we don't have to go into the details of what the strike price is and all that. We're not doing math quite yet. But when this buyer buys 100 shares at the strike price, it has to come from somewhere. And it comes from the option seller. So when this buyer exercises, this seller is obligated to fulfill that contract and provide 100 shares to the call option buyer. In other words, this seller is assigned those shares. They are assigned to provide those shares to the buyer. So while the buyer has this option to exercise or not, the seller is required to provide those 100 shares to the call option buyer. So when the buyer exercises, the seller is assigned and they provide those shares to the long counterparty. Now here, let's say this put is in the money, so this buyer exercises. This means that the seller is assigned. Now it's different in this case because with puts, they give you the right but not the obligation to sell 100 shares at the strike price. So if the buyer wants to sell, that means the seller has to be on the receiving end. The seller of the put has to be on the receiving end. They have to buy those shares from the put owner. So those shares go to the put options seller. So up here, the resulting effect is that the buyer has 100 shares more in their portfolio, and here the seller has 100 shares less. Down here, the resulting effect is the buyer has 100 shares less, and the seller has 100 shares more at the strike price. So that's what it means to be assigned. You're just on the other end of the option buyer exercising their option. You are assigned those shares. In the case of a call, you have to sell those 100 shares at the strike. In the case of the put, you have to buy those 100 shares at the strike. That's all that assignment is. Now, how it affects your profit and loss, depending on your option strategy, is a little bit more particular, but we're going to get into that. So I know I said we're going to do 3 option strategies, and one of those is going to be selling naked calls and puts, but I decided that most of you guys are probably not selling naked calls and puts, so we're not going to waste your time. So we're going to jump straight into debit spreads and describe how assignment affects this type of option strategy. So before we get into the numbers and stuff, I'm just going to tell you exactly what happens when you get assigned, just as far as P&L goes. It's actually going to be a profit. So assignment when it comes to debit spreads is nothing to be sweating over because you're going to make a gain by the end of things. That gain is going to be the absolute value of strike 2 minus strike 1. So in other words, the distance between your legs. How many points is between your long leg and your short leg? Multiply that by 100 and then subtract the premium you received. Okay, so this is the distance between legs times 100 minus the premium you paid. That is going to be your profit if you get assigned. Now, why is that exactly? Well, let's say that you purchased a call right here. Let's say it had a strike price of 99. You paid a premium of 150. And that's all we need to know about that one. And then as part of this debit spread, you sold a call against it. And that call that you sold had a strike of 100. And the premium that you received for that call was 120. So let's go ahead and use the formula first given this trade so you know how to use that and just lock it away in your brain before we get too far into the numbers of exactly why this happens. So we're going to take the distance between our legs. And our legs, when I say legs, I mean the distance between our options contracts, strikes. So if we take the difference between these two, that's 1. We have 1 point between the strike of our two contracts here. Then we multiply it by 100, and we're going to subtract the premium we paid to enter this trade. So if we paid $1.50 in premium, that's a debit. We paid a debit of $1.50 for our long leg, but we received $1.20 in premium for a short leg. That means that this trade is a net debit 30 cents. So paid a debit at $1.50, received a credit of $1.20. We paid 30 cents, aka $30 to get into this trade. 30 cents in premiums terms is $30. So we don't exactly subtract 30 cents. We're going to, more practically speaking, subtract how much we paid to get into this trade. So we're going to subtract $30 from this. So our gain would be 100 minus 30, and that's going to be 70 bucks. So that'd be our gain. So we take the difference between our legs, subtract the premium we paid to get to the trade. That's what's going to happen in the case of assignment. You have the highest probability of this happening if your short leg is in the money, and the deeper in the money it is, the more likely it is going to happen. The closer to expiration it is, the more likely it's going to happen. Now let's explain why this math works this way. So let's say we're coming up on expiration day. Your short leg is pretty deep in the money, which is not exactly represented by these premiums very accurately, but let's say that it is, and someone exercises it on you. So that means that you get assigned. You sold this call to someone, you sold to open this call, they exercise it, you have to provide those shares that they want to buy. So you are going to sell 100 shares at the strike price. So over here, we'll say you get assigned, you sell 100 shares at the strike price of 100. So if we're selling those 100 shares, you receive a credit of $10,000. If you sell each of those shares for $100 each and you're selling 100 of them, you're going to receive 10,000 bucks for doing so. But you're also going to be short 100 shares if you don't already own them. So it's going to automatically happen to reduce your risk, because being short 100 shares is pretty risky. Your long leg is going to automatically exercise. So if you remember what exercising means, and it should be pretty simple as compared to describing what assignment means, but if you remember what exercising means, that means you're going to buy 100 shares at the strike price. So let's go ahead and do that. So we buy 100 shares, and we do it at the strike price of 99. So we are going to pay a debit of $9,900. And now what's going to end up happening is we have 0 shares, our position is closed, and the net credit we received is $100. All that math that we've just done basically explains the distance between legs times 100. Distance between legs is 1 point, times 100 is 100. So we've done this part of the formula, this whole section right here, we've just done. So now your position isn't open. That's great, but there's one more thing we have to account for, and that is going to be the net debit that you paid. And earlier we discussed that the net debit you paid was 30 cents in premium, the difference between the debit you paid for your long leg and the credit you received for your short leg. So we still have to subtract 30 bucks from this. And now we are left with a $70 gain. And that is just pure profit. Whoop. So that's what happens with calls, is when you get assigned your short leg, your long leg is going to automatically exercise. And the way we just described it is going to be how your profit is calculated. The same thing is going to be for puts. I'm not going to run through the numbers for puts. I just want you to generally understand that when you get assigned your short leg, your long leg is going to automatically exercise. And your profit is going to be the distance between your legs times 100 minus the debit you paid, because that debit stays in the seller's pocket. So the person who bought this call from you, that 150 stays with them. You keep that 120, but that 150 stays with them. So if you keep that 120 and that 150 stays with the option seller, you're going to lose 30 bucks. So that's why we subtract 30 from the 100 we gain from being assigned and exercising our long leg. So I'm not going to run through the numbers with puts. Just know that when you're assigned your short leg, your long leg is automatically going to exercise, and this is how your profit is calculated. Okay, so now let's take a look at how assignment affects credit spreads. And in this case, when you have a credit spread, when you get assigned, you're going to experience a loss. Because if you think about it, this credit spread is the exact opposite side of the debit spread we were just looking at. With the debit spread, we sold this call and we bought this one. So really what we're looking at in some sense, it's the counterparty to your debit spread. So when you're looking at counterparties, when you have one person over here, what they're experiencing, their counterparty is experiencing the exact opposite thing. When someone's buying a call, the person who sold the call is experiencing the exact opposite that they are as far as profit and loss goes. Just intuitively, when we're looking at that debit spread before, if it's the exact opposite of this credit spread, and when we are assigned, we have a gain of $70, we know our loss before we do any of the numbers is going to be $70. We're going to lose $70 when we get assigned, but we're going to run through the numbers and I'll explain the formula and all that just like we did before. So let's take a look down here at this little formula again. So it's actually the exact same thing. It is the distance between your legs, K, the absolute value K2 minus K1 times 100, distance between legs times 100 minus the premium you received. The reason it is the exact same is because previously I said gain and now we're looking at a loss. So when the debit spread guy is making a gain when they are assigned, we are making a loss and they are going to be equal to the exact same number. And that's why these formulas are the exact same. So I'm going to erase distance between legs. I think you guys understand that by now. So calculating it would be the same distance between legs is 1, multiply that by 100 and subtract the net credit you received. So in this case, we paid 120 and this is a debit for this call option. And we received 150 and that's a credit for this call option. So the difference between these two is going to be 30. So we're going to subtract the $30 that we received and the net loss is going to be $70, just like we said. So calculated just the same as before. The only difference is in this case, it's a loss, not a gain as compared to debit spreads. So let's take a look and see why this is exactly. So when this call is in the money and someone decides to exercise it, that means you are assigned 100 shares. You have to sell 100 shares at the strike price. This is going to leave you short $9,900. And this will be a credit. So you'll receive those $9,900 into your account and automatically your brokerage is going to exercise your long leg, this long call. And so you are going to purchase 100 shares at the strike price. The resulting effect is you're going to have 0 shares in your account if you sold short to begin with. You've closed the position and you've paid a debit of $10,000. So if you receive $9,900 for being assigned for selling those 100 shares, but have to pay $10,000 to close your position, that means your resulting loss is going to be $100. But we can subtract the premium, the net credit we received, because we get to keep that credit in the case of assignment. It always stays with the seller in the case of assignment. When you exercise a call option or a put, you don't get that premium back. That's why you can't just buy an in the money call or put and exercise immediately for profit. You give up that premium. So we subtract the premium we received and that net premium was 30 cents. So we're going to subtract $30 from this loss and the resulting loss is going to be $70. So with debit spreads, you're going to be making a gain and with credit spreads, you're going to be making a loss. And when you open credit spreads, this $100 right here is going to be pulled aside and it's going to be called collateral. So $100 of your own money is going to be set aside in case of assignment. And that's just to cover worst case scenario. So that $100 is going to be pulled aside to make sure with certainty that you have funds to fulfill the obligations of this call contract of being assigned. So you'll see that on your brokerage on Robinhood, when you enter the trade, it'll say that $100 has been pulled aside for collateral. If the distance between your strikes is 2 points, then it's going to be $200 that's set aside for collateral, etc. When your short leg gets assigned, your long leg is automatically going to exercise to reduce the risk of that assignment. It's going to close your position and your total gain or loss is calculated by the formula down here. The probability of assignment increases the deeper your short leg is in the money and the closer it gets to expiration. It's also possible that if there's a dividend coming up that you may be assigned as well. So that's something to keep in mind. But the idea of dividend risk is a little bit more complicated. I'll have to do that in a future video. Hope this helps some. I'm sorry the markets are taking a poop. I hope you guys are doing all right. I love you. Take care.